Well, the newest Indiana Civic Health Index emphasizes the state's poor voter engagement, and a new nonprofit wants to help turn that around. Indiana consistently ranks in the bottom 10 of states for voter registration and turnout, and state leaders like former Indiana Chief Justice Randall Shepard and former Attorney General Greg Zeller say better civic education is a vital remedy. Ann and Bill Morrow are hoping to provide that remedy. The Morrows, longtime staffers for Birch and Evan Bayh, have launched the Indiana Citizen, an online voter resource. With support from other high-profile Hoosier politicos, including major GOP donor Bob Grand and former Todd Young campaign manager Trevor Foudy, the Indiana Citizen is meant to help people register to vote and learn more about who's on their ballot. The site, which is still a work in progress, links to voter registration and will have a news and commentary section. Nikki Kelly, a worthwhile goal, to be sure. I would hope that everybody can agree to that. But can the Indiana Citizen be effective at it?
And I hope so, because nothing's working. I mean, you know, and to be fair, I mean, I do put a lot of this responsibility on voters. I mean, they have to care enough to ferret out and look for information. And, you know, people are too busy sharing memes and, you know, tweeting than to actually do research and learn about issues. One way I think this group could help, as well as the media doing a better job at this, I'll put myself in here, is to show more how government really impacts your everyday life. You know, what you're paying at the BMV, or, you know, whether your street has a stoplight or a, you know, light. I mean, all those decisions are made at the government level, and people need to, you know, get more involved and sort of down at the grassroots and maybe care a little less about the federal stuff, frankly.
Yeah, that always strikes a chord with me, and you hear it from state and local lawmakers who get civic complaints about issues that they have no control over whatsoever. They talked at the Civic Health Index presentation, and Bill Morrow, as part of this, has talked about the need for better civic education, certainly in our schools, but really across the board for every age group. Is this, at least, it's not a magic bullet. No one would say that it is, but does this feel like it can be effective?
Well, broken record here, I applaud everything that Nikki said. Let's hope so. Let's all join hands and say we hope so, because it's not, I mean, it's, when we're the worst in the country, or one of the worst in the country, that's bad enough. But when you look at the rest of the country and they stink as well, I mean, it's like nobody's good here. Right. So we have a nationwide problem. It just happens to be particularly egregious in Indiana, and it leads to all sorts. You can draw a line from lack of civic participation, going to the polls, engaging in city council meetings, to a lack of attention to health issues, to the way one maintains his or her own health, and it just sort of, and neighborhood activism, and it just erodes. And what is left if we don't have an informed and engaged electorate society? So let's hope. I think Bill and Ann Morrow should be applauded, and we can all do our part to support this. Now,
I asked Bill, you know, is this group going to get behind things at the State House? Because there are policy things you could do to try and increase voter registration at the very, very minimum. And he said, no, that's not what we're about. We're trying to educate voters. That is our mission. They'll raise money for that, a statewide communications campaign potentially. But should there also be somewhat of a greater focus on policy solutions that could be enacted at the State House?
Maybe eventually. I mean, it's a bipartisan group, right? And Bill Morrow's I used to work with him, and he's been around this business a long time and knows it inside and out. But I think he's right in that answer. You know, I'm reminded of Lee Hamilton's book. I think the title of it was "How Congress Works and Why You Should Care." It was just like a very, here's why you should care about this, to Nikki's point, right? You have to start there, and if you can help people understand, here's how this process is organized. I mean, that's what I do for a living, right? I'm not like some policy wonk, really. I'm around it, so I can memorize it, but mostly I'm a process guy. I understand how the governmental process, and how the intersection of the private sector and the public sector is complicated. And you have to understand how all that fits together. And I think that's the goal of this group. I think it's great, and I hope they are successful.
Yeah. How effective can this be?
Oh, I think it can be effective. Ed and I have put money in it because we think it can be effective. Do I think it's, as you said, the panacea? No, but it is an important first step to have one location where you can put your address in and find out who represents you on every level and information about those people so that you can no longer say, I don't know. You can form opinions. So I think that's an important first step. And then the Bar Foundation is partnering with this group too, because one of the things we have to do is better civic education starting in grade school. Yeah. And if we can do that and raise the thing, then we can talk about other policy changes. But if you want to get above 50% of the vote, you've got to go to states that allow registration up to the time of the election. We shut it off just when most people, not groupies, but most people are paying attention, right? Yeah. And we shut off registration then. There are things we can do.
Certainly not viewers of this program. But.
Well, I mean, there are things that we could do legislatively, but I think this is the important grassroots, ground level step to get to where we need to go next.
And the more you push in terms of the kinds of reform measures that you address, the more you run a risk of being seen as not a bipartisan or let's say nonpartisan operation, and you run afoul of some of the constituents you need to make this work.